legacy is at stake. Sources close to Obama's transition say his plan right now is to try to persuade Donald Trump to keep some of his policies in place. And they say Obama is hopeful he can make his case because he feels Trump doesn't have a passionate view about some issues. And yes, the two men are talking. In fact, Mr. Trump says he likes Mr. Obama and has even sought his advice on cabinet picks. With me now, CNN political commentator Mark Lamont Hill and Douglas Brinkley, CNN presidential historian. Welcome to both of you. So Mark, does it surprise you that Donald Trump is supposedly asking Mr. Obama about even cabinet picks?
Not at all. Donald Trump admittedly doesn't know very much about these issues. Donald Trump ran on a platform that played to the cheap seats. He wanted white working class people to believe that he was going to champion their cause the entire time. He wanted the xenophobes and the racists to believe that he was going to run policy based on those ideological extremes. And the truth is Donald Trump isn't going to do that, not because he's a wonderful person, but because it just isn't practical. So now that he's actually won this election magically, he has to figure out how to govern. And in doing so, he's going to pull from all sorts of people because, Kyle, Donald Trump doesn't have a worldview. He didn't want to change the world. He just wanted to run the world. And now that he's in a position to do so, he's now going to seek solid advice or some advice.
So Douglas, is there ever any evidence that Donald Trump is following President Obama's advice?
We haven't seen any yet, but I think Barack Obama's done a wonderful job of kind of healing the country. There are a lot of people traumatized by the election. The fact of the matter is, majority of Americans voted for Hillary Clinton. The fact that Obama quickly was able to say, I will not only meet with Donald Trump, I'll try to be instructive. Once again, the president is just a class act. And hopefully some of the wisdom that President Obama's earned over the last 8 years will seep into Donald Trump. We don't know where that is at this juncture, but I'm sure he's talking to him about how to not use inflammatory language aimed at Muslims around the world. That's not a smart thing to do. I was hoping he made inroads on climate change, but the picking of Pruitt as EPA tells me that Obama or Leonardo DiCaprio or Al Gore really haven't gotten to Donald Trump. So I'm not sure if the president's been able to influence Trump's thinking, but I'm sure glad that they're communicating.
It is strange. I've been thinking about that all morning, Mark, that, you talk to Al Gore, you invite Leonardo DiCaprio, then you pick a guy for EPA secretary who doesn't like the EPA and is suing the EPA. He wants to do away with the EPA.
Doesn't believe the EPA.
So is Donald Trump just throwing a bone to anti-Trump voters and then doing what he wants?
I think he's probably getting some whispers in his ear to look like you're being more universal in your thought process, look like you're working hard to appease people on the left and the right. I think it's actually far less interesting than that. I think Donald Trump is just all over the map. I don't think he knows what he's doing. I don't think he has a worldview. I don't think he has a strong take on these issues. And so he's pulling together as many people as possible to stitch together some sort of a policy team. It's very, very dangerous, and it's something we need to pay careful attention to.
Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about President Obama's legacy because he's been talking a lot about his legacy lately, Douglas. Will this really shape the president's legacy? I mean, him talking about it to all these different sources?
Well, I don't know. It doesn't hurt. I mean, he's trying to remind people of what it was like 8 years ago. I mean, the classic question, were we worse off 8 years ago? The answer is yes. We had a great recession. It was awful. The economy was tanking. Unemployment was sky high, and the Obama administration 8 years has driven unemployment down to below 5%, which is in itself quite remarkable. General Motors was saved, on and on. And, we have short memory spans in this country, so the president talking to Fareed Zakaria about some of these issues kind of helps get the foundation set for his post-presidency. He's going to have to now build his library on the south side of Chicago. He's going to be writing a memoir reflecting on all of this. And he wants to remind people that a lot has been done these last 8 years. Gay rights, 2 women to the Supreme Court, the killing of Osama bin Laden. One could start laundry listing many. We don't want to let the election of Donald Trump seem to erase all of that success. So I think it's useful.
Mark?
I think that, again, presidents can't, create their own legacies, right? At least not by talking to journalists. at some point it comes down to the policies. And I think the question of are you better than you were 8 years ago is the right one. And I think for some people you are. And I think to that extent, President Obama's legacy will be a positive one. But again, we can't just think locally, we also have to think globally. If you're in Palestine right now, if you're in Syria right now, if you're in Yemen right now, if you're nationally, if you're at an HBCU right now, if you're a student who didn't get loans forgiven but Wall Street did, you're probably not better than you were 8 years ago. And so again, President Obama's legacy is a complicated one. It's certainly an impressive one on many areas, domestic policies like universal health care. I mean, it's one of the most significant domestic policies since 1965. But it's a robust legacy. It's a complicated one, and really history will tell us.
I just want to touch on race for just a second, because I do find it interesting, because everybody's fighting about who's the more divisive person, Donald Trump or President Obama. And Douglas, so, obviously President Obama was the first African-American president. How will history record that? Did he divide the nation further by wanting to be everyone's president?
I don't think so, but there's no question that, look, he's leaving office with about a 95% approval rating with African Americans. He's in heroic territory of people like John Lewis and Martin Luther King and Frederick Douglass in that realm. But I've talked to President Obama as one of the historians that regularly met with him. He was a Mount Rushmore president. He wanted to have a very significant presidency for all Americans. And I see, oddly, similarities between Barack Obama and Dwight Eisenhower. Eisenhower came into office and said we had the Korean War, and he started extracting us from it. You see Barack Obama trying to get troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan, and not completely out, but reduced greatly. And you see a kind of no-drama Obama, and it was quite that way with Eisenhower, too, a kind of integrity of 8 years. And yet, Eisenhower couldn't get his VP Nixon elected. John Kennedy won. Barack Obama couldn't get his Secretary of State Hillary Clinton elected. You've got Donald Trump. But it's a fascinating 8 years of Obama, and he calls it a chapter in American history, and I think he'll get fairly high marks for being able to run the White House as well as he did.
Mark, your thoughts?
I think President Obama, first of all, you say he's 95% successful among African Americans, popularity rating among African Americans. That is impressive, but that is his base. The question is, how does the broader American public see him? And I think in some ways he has normalized the idea of a black president. He has normalized the idea of a black family in the White House, and that does have extraordinary psychological value. I never want to understate that. So to some extent, he has made enormous inroads. But again, for me, it's not just about representation, it's about policy. So on the one hand, he's been extraordinary. In other ways, again, history will be really the thing that tells us who and what Barack Obama is and was to everyday people, but especially the vulnerable.
I'd have to leave it there. Mark Lamont Hill, Douglas Brinkley, thanks to both of you. I'll be right back.
Where will the lead take us today? Straight to the source.
Would Israel be willing to go along with those demands?
To a side you haven't seen.
That sounds like a young man's game.
All the way to the heart of the problem.
What is going on in Ferguson, Missouri, in downtown America?
Maybe all the way to the president.
You think you were 90s back then?
The Lead with Jake Tapper. Weekdays at 4.
Hello, I'm CNN's Richard Quest. I watch CNN Go wherever I may find myself. It's really very simple. First, grab your phone or tablet. Oh, thank you. Press TV, select CNN International, and log in with your TV provider. CNN International on CNN Go. The best way to watch CNN anytime, anywhere. What a view.